back to another episode of the Ducks in a Row podcast. It's so funny. I almost had a moment there where I said, welcome back to the Passionate Gratitude podcast. Raise your hand if you have been here long enough to remember that the name of this podcast used to be Passionate Gratitude. Long story short, we changed the name to my actual brand, to my actual business, my company, which is Ducks in a Row. And you may or may not hear my sweet, darling puppy dog. But she's currently whining at the door. I've told her a couple times to lay down. It might just take a couple minutes. This is real life. If you are watching me on YouTube, this is my dining room. This is my dining room table where I sit and I record my podcasts every week. It ain't fancy, friends, but it gets the job done. And I enjoy creating this for you and making this content for you to help you with time management, productivity, organizing, daily life goals, business, faith, family, homeschooling, what else? All the things, right? And I got something in my eye too, which again, if you are watching on YouTube, you see me like continuing to dig at my eye. This is life, right? I keep saying that, but it's true. This is not a perfect little buttoned up presentation of some kind of, fanciful podcast. Just isn't. But nevertheless, it gets the job done. So why don't we jump in today? We are going to be talking about, and it's kind of funny because it's like taking it back a little, but this is the last episode here in January. So I want to almost recap the month just a little bit. And this episode is going to be kind of talking a little bit about a situation that I had regarding my word of the year. So if you don't know what a word of the year is, it is something that we do around here, or a lot of people do, where you kind of focus on a word for the year surrounding your goals and what you want to accomplish that year, maybe in your relationships, in your family life, in your faith walk, in your career, in your job, whatever it might be, right? So if you haven't picked a word of the year yet, go on ahead and do that. It is never too late. But as we recap this month, I wanted to kind of talk for a second about what we talked about the very first week, which we talked about the word of the year, either in the first episode or the second episode of this month. Honestly, time escapes me sometimes, and it might have actually been the second episode, but regardless, nevertheless, we are going to talk about this today because I had a really, really, really cool thing happen to me. When was it? It was last week, and I don't remember the day, but it doesn't matter. I had a really cool thing happen to me, a really cool God wink, and a really cool just like, you're on the right path moment in my life that pertained to my word of the year. So that is why it's important, and that is why I want to share it with you guys. So before we get there, let's just quickly, like I said, sort of recap what we were talking about here in January and get you geared up for February. I always send a newsletter out at the end of the month. It's usually like the very last day of the month, usually. Sometimes it's the first day of the next month, or like 2 days before the end of the month, whatever the case may be. It's around the end of the month, beginning of the month, right? And I did that today. If you do not subscribe to my newsletter already, you can do that. The link will be in the show notes. So you can head there and you can go ahead and do that, because I share graphics. Every single month, I share graphics on something pertaining to the theme of that month. Sometimes it's a challenge. Sometimes it's a focus. Sometimes it's just like an educational piece, where like every day on my Instagram stories, I will share a little snippet of good info, or just like something to like teach you about something. This particular month was about Go Month, or Get Organized Month. And it's actually kind of like a nationwide thing. It's not something I came up with, but what I did to kind of celebrate Go Month was I created a graphic for every day of the week, Monday through Friday, of something that we were going to clean out or declutter, right? And we took 4 different sections of the home, so to speak, not really rooms, but like sections of your home, areas of your home. And we broke them down in how to purge and declutter in that particular area. And then so every day through the week on my stories, I was sharing that here throughout the month of January. And I also did a podcast episode on that at the beginning of this month. If you subscribe to my newsletter, you actually get those graphics in a Google a Google Doc where you can actually print them out if you want, so you can have them on hand or just have them there to refer back to if you want to kind of go at your own pace when it comes to any of these challenges or focuses or educational pieces that I do every month. So make sure you subscribe to my newsletter if you want kind of easier access to that. I also spend time on my podcast once a month going over whatever the theme is for that month. I specifically spend an episode talking about it. So you can go back to one of the first 2. Again, I should have checked this before I started talking, but like, you know me, like that's just not how I do things. But it was either the first or second episode of this month. So that's what we did then. We were talking about different things pertaining to decluttering. So go back and listen if you missed that. I also had, again, we also prepared for the year and really kind of, just got ourselves going with how to plan in our planners. If you happen to purchase my planner that I created, which it is still available on Amazon, you can, again, see that link in the show notes. But I kind of went through that a little bit, what we can be doing to kind of gear up and plan for this year. And then last week we had my very good friend Jill Cook on the show. If you did not listen to that one, I definitely recommend going back and listening to that episode. We talked just all sorts of things, cleaning, organizing, and just kind of her journey as she has sort of become Insta famous. You know, she's a cool gal. So you definitely want to follow her. She's a very dear friend of mine. And so that's kind of where we were. And like I said, I know we talked a little bit about the word of the year this month, and I want to just sort of like button up this month with touching on that again, because like I said, something really cool happened to me regarding that. And I really want to share that with you guys. And I really want to encourage you as I share this little snippet with you. I want to encourage you to pick a word of the year and really focus on it if you haven't already done that yet. So that's what we're going to do here today. Looking forward to February. I'm so excited. Next week we'll be talking about and tackling February's kind of focus for the month, which has to do with paperwork organizing in preparation for taxes. Yay, fun, right? So you're going to want to come back for that and listen into what I have to say about that. And then we're going to have another good friend of mine, Avery, on the show in February. And she's going to be talking to us a little bit about fitness goals and health and wellness when it pertains to kind of like the new year and getting things off and running and then sticking with it. So I'm excited to talk to her about that because I know for a lot of people by February, they have fallen off the wagon. And they're like, yep, forget it, you know, so she's going to hopefully give us some insight on that next week. So, or might be the next, I'm sorry, but sometime in February. So let's talk about this word of the year thing. But before we do, I wanted to just share a little sponsor for you today. Okay, so let's talk about this really quick. Last week, like I said, I can't even really remember what day it was, unfortunately, but it doesn't really matter. I was on my treadmill and I was having a moment of reflection with God. And I do that sometimes on my treadmill. It might sound funny, but it's true. I will walk or I will run or whatever. And I will often read some either Bible verses or I will do a devotional. I will go into the YouVersion app, which is actually where I was that particular day. I love YouVersion. I actually used to read their devotional every single day. And if you follow me on Instagram, you would see I would actually share the verse of the day on there. I've only shied away from that a little bit in this season because I have begun to read the Bible. My goal is to read the Bible from cover to cover in 1 year. So I'm doing a plan with that right now, which is pretty time consuming. If that's something you've ever done, then you know it takes a little bit of time. So that's what I've been doing. And I haven't been in YouVersion as often, but I still love to go to YouVersion. So when I have the time, I jump on the YouVersion app and I kind of dig in, right? So they have a really cool thing at the top where it kind of like goes through, it's almost like an Instagram story, you guys. It's really interesting how they lay it out, but it's really cool. They'll have some sort of like famous, semi-famous person get on there and like give a devotion for the day, and then they will like regarding the verse of the day, and then they will have like a little like written devotional, and they'll have some pretty graphics up of like the verse of the day that you can share, and it's just a really neat little way to spend some time in the Word. Well, recently my sister shared with me that there also is a guided prayer that apparently they have like right after that. I had never seen it before this particular day. I had never seen it before. My sister told me about it, as a matter of fact. It's the first time ever seeing it, and it's called guided prayer, right? So I'm like, okay, well, what does this mean? Let's check it out. So that particular day I had a moment to jump in and look at this guided prayer. So I was going through the guided prayer, and it kind of like gives you some prompts, some things to pray for, and what have you. And then it'll kind of give you like a word or a concept, so to speak, of a particular just an idea or a word or a concept. And it wants you to kind of pray over that particular thing. And there's usually either 2 or 3 of those words. So that day, you'll never guess, the very first day I ever did the guided prayer, you'll never guess what the first like word was, or the first like concept or idea that they wanted me to pray over. It was peace. So for some of you, you're like, okay, what does that mean? Well, peace was my word for 2022. I decided at some point in 2021, usually in December, God just continues to do this for me, which I just find to be absolutely amazing, but he will lay a word on my heart. Like he has done this for the past 3 years. He has laid a word on my heart that I feel is coming from him in order to focus on that particular year. And it's really to focus on not just in my walk with him, but just really in my life in general, and like every aspect of my life. I really like my word of the year to really be able to infiltrate every aspect of my life. And so he lays these words on my heart, and it's just amazing. So my word for 2022 was peace. So I'm like, wow, that's awesome. Okay, yeah, I'm going to do this guided prayer on peace. That was my word last year. How cool is that? So I read through the guided prayer, and then I take a moment to just really speak to the Lord, from my heart about that guided prayer, and about peace. And as I was reflecting, I was like, wow, God, I haven't even taken a very long amount of time. I don't want to say I didn't take any time, but I really hadn't taken a significant amount of time yet to reflect on peace and how my peace was maybe changed throughout the year, with that being my word, which I should have, right? I should have spent plenty of time on it because it was my word of the year, but like I hadn't reflected on it yet, really, for whatever reason. But in that moment I was like, wow, God, you really have moved in my life when it comes to peace. And I just spent the next couple minutes just like really thanking him and just kind of really reflecting and thinking about how much he really helped me in the area of peace. Now, I am nowhere close to the actual goal of the peace I would like to have, in my life, because I do think peace is hard, especially for me and my personality. It is hard for me to really grasp. So I know I still have a little ways to go, but holy moly, did God ever show up in that way throughout 2022. He helped me grow so much in my walk with finding peace in him and just peace in my life in general. So that was awesome, right? And I took that moment and I reflected, and I'm just taking this moment to tell you to do that same thing. If you have not done that yet, go back to last year's word of the year, and really reflect on it. Take a moment to record, even write down the ways that your life has changed, or what happened in regards to that particular word. So do that if you haven't done that yet. That's definitely my advice for you for this episode. But the coolest thing that happened is what happened next. So after I read about peace and did that guided prayer and then reflected on it, I clicked on the next screen for it to take me to the next portion of the guided prayer. And wouldn't you know it, guess what the word was? Yeah, you guessed it. It was surrender. And if you don't know why that's not important, it's because that's my word for this year. Yeah. Surrender is my word for this year, for 2023. And I was like, say what? Like, Lord, really? And like, these are the moments, and I'm going to speak to, the believers here, but I'm also speaking to you if you're not a believer, because these are the moments when I know God is real. There's so many times, right? There's so much more than this, but this is truly one of those moments when it's like, how could I deny him when he shows up this way? Let me remind you, that particular day, there were only 2 words that they were having you pray over. Like I said, the guided prayer has a lot of like aspects to it, but there's only 2 or 3 words usually. And those were the only 2 words: peace and surrender. Last year's word of the year and this year's word of the year. So, of course, I'm like getting chills. My eyes are welling up with tears. And I'm like, okay, I see you. I see you, God. I see you. Thank you. And I took the moment just to even just thank him for just being here. It was just a really cool moment. And then I read through the guided prayer, and it gave me a different perspective on the word surrender even. So like, I've obviously been thinking about the word surrender, and I've been thinking about and reflecting on all the ways that I am surrendering this year and how that's pertaining to all the aspects of my life. But in this guided prayer, the word surrender even had a few other things to it that I hadn't thought about yet. I'm like, okay, so you want me to really focus on this too, God, right? So I took some time to do that. So you guys, I just wanted to share this with you because I want you to understand, first of all, like I've already said, I always want you to understand where my heart's coming from when it comes to my faith and, my Christian walk. But also, I want you to just understand the significance and the power of picking a word for the year. It just really grounds us. It just really helps us focus. It just really, really helps us understand the way in which we want to go. And I just challenge you, if you haven't already picked one, or even if you have, just make sure as you're reflecting through that it just kind of feels like it's not forced. Like you didn't force that word on yourself. Right? Like, you're not forcing some kind of concept that you just really want, but more so it's being given to you. You feel like you have been given this kind of idea or this concept. Because I just really want to make sure that as you are picking your word for the year, that it is just very mindful in just allowing what's supposed to happen, right? And then I want you to, so as you reflect on last year's and you think about this year's, I just want you to really, really take it seriously. And every single day, and even if you are not a Christian or you're not a praying person, just take time every day to think about that word and how it's fitting into your life that particular day. I really think that it is such a good tool for us when it comes to entrepreneurship, goals, even just goals within your family life and your relationships, and also just good time management and like organizing, right? It's just a really good tool for like all of that stuff. And so I just want to challenge you that today. I just want you to go ahead and get your word of the year, reflect on last year's word, and just be very mindful about it. Just commit to really paying attention to that and reflecting on that as the year goes on. So I really hope that this was helpful. I hope that this story kind of gave you chills as it did me when it happened to me, and whenever I was talking about it again, it was a powerful movement of God. But I just want you guys to go forth with this tip and hopefully be able to apply it to your life. So like I said, I hope it was helpful, and I hope you'll share if you did find it helpful. That always helps me whenever my podcast gets shared, and I just appreciate you guys so much for being here. I always do, and I cannot thank you enough. And I just hope and pray you come back next week. And as always, even though the name has changed to Ducks in a Row, I still hope you live your life with passionate gratitude. And we will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.